Boy, that came up fast tonight. I have to say, Facebook keeps changing things. So sometimes it looks different than it does the next time when I go to get on. So, hey, I hope you have had an amazing weekend and a great day today. I have to say, yesterday and up until a little while ago, the weather was spectacular. It was warm. It felt like spring. It does not now. It has gotten cold. The wind has picked up and it's howling again. And the temperatures have dropped from mid-60s into the 30s in just like no time at all. It's just delightful. Okay, probably not. I could be stretching the imagination on that one, but that's okay. I can stress the imagination a little bit, and that may be the case. But anyway, hey, that's called life, isn't it? The weather changes, and we don't have a lot to say about it. In fact, we have none. It just happens. That's how it goes. I pray again that you have had a great weekend, a blessed weekend, and that maybe this holiday some of you had off. Many of us worked no matter what. Don't get a lot of these days off, but that's okay. I mean, the only thing I miss, and yet I don't, is the mail, but that's okay. That just means there'll probably be more of it tomorrow. More junk mail. Maybe, to go with it. One never knows, do they? But anyway, what we know is that God is with us. God is protecting us. He's guiding us. And he wants us to study his word. And I have to tell you that I am getting more intrigued by Daniel. With the more and more I get into it and the deeper I go, I am becoming more fascinated by him and his story and what he's trying to help you and me learn as we go through our time together. So make sure and grab your Bible. We are in Daniel chapter 5, and we will get started here in just about a minute. We don't want to start too early. Have you ever sat and tried to watch your computer back itself up? My carbonite is trying to back up, and it was having a problem apparently, probably because I hadn't been on my laptop in a day or so, and so it was having an issue. But I think it's finally backed up. I think it's done its thing. I'm glad about that. Anyway, okay, well, let's begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, you are amazing. You surprise us. You confound us. You frustrate us. And yet, you are the one who gives life. Maybe it's not you doing all those things, but you certainly make it so that we have to struggle through to figure out your message in the midst of a world that wants to tell us how to do things and tell us what to be. That we often submit to those outside pressures that are not what we should be submitting to. So God, be with us tonight. Just guide us, strengthen us, bless us, that we may see you more clearly. In your name we pray. Amen. Daniel chapter 5, verse 24. Okay, remember, writing on the wall, the hand of God. Can you imagine what that had to have been like? I've had visions and I've had things happen that I go, that must be God trying to get my attention. But this had to be amazing anyway. Okay. So verse 24. So from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. See, this is the judgment of God's hand that's going to be unleashed. And so remember where we are. Remember what this is all about, that they have taken the, Nebuchadnezzar's people have taken all the gold and the silver. They have taken them out of the temple, and they're using it for their own good. I mean, they're using it to drink with. I mean, come on. I would not take my communion chalices and my paten and put salami and Kool-Aid in it. You know, I mean, that just would not be appropriate, would it? That would not be right. It would not be what those elements were meant for. They are sacred. It is holy. Okay, so verse 25. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. And we may go, wonder what that means. Well, let me tell you. See, Daniel, though, could read and interpret this miracle because God wrote it in a language that Daniel could read. Now, that in itself should be interesting to think through, that this was written in a language that Daniel could interpret. The Mene, it means counted or appointed. Now, it's Mene, Mene, so think about it, the emphasis that goes on there, okay? The emphasis is because it's repeated. Mene, Mene. The Tekel is weighed or assessed by the God who weighs actions, in a sense. And the Parsin is really Parsin. It's a plural of Perez, or divided. So the emphasis is on the parts of the division. Because Perez means divided, as to Medes and the Persians. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that my Bible, the one I'm using now, does not put a U ahead of the Perez. And it probably should. It would be and. So, it should probably have that on there. Again, it depends on the translation you're using of what that's going to look like. So it would really say, counted or appointed, counted or appointment, weighed or assessed, and the plural of the Perez. Okay? Your kingdom is divided. Okay, now think about this. This is now God writing, okay? Writing already. And your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So everything now is going to be divided. And really, oh, wait a minute. No, I got ahead of myself. I'm verse 25. Okay, so that's what it means. Now, 26, this is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. See, this is soon to happen then. It is very soon to happen. And God is just in his punishment. So this is not just trivial. This is major for God to be making the pronouncement that is being made. Verse 27, Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Now think about that. So on the scales of justice, okay, God has found that you are wanting. Okay, so we already have division. God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. And Perez, in verse 28, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So everything is now going to be divided. Now remember how big this kingdom was and what that meant and the power and the authority that there was tied up. Just like that, God reduces because of the sins of the people. Verse 29, Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed in purple. A chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made concerning him. Now remember, Belshazzar, this is the king Belshazzar. This is the confusing thing when we got, and Daniel's a Belshazzar as well. So, but here we're calling him Daniel to keep the confusion out. And a proclamation was made concerning him that he should rank third in the kingdom. Daniel did not ask for the gifts. He did not want the gifts. He was given them anyway. And Belshazzar, though, did not reject the reading that had now been given. Interesting. Now remember back up here in verse, God has numbered, in verse 26, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. A little foretelling, because in verse 30, that very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed. Now remember, back in verse 16, we had already talked about the rewards that would be given. And now we have Belshazzar has been killed on the very night that it was prophesied by Daniel that it would happen. Verse 31, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. And yet Babylon is now going to fall to Darius as well. So we have a whole lot of changing of the guard in a sense. See, Darius means, his name means the holder of the scepter. The problem is these two empires, the Medes and the Persians, joined forces to overthrow Babylon and became a dominant power of the day. The invading armies diverted the river Euphrates, okay, gotta have water to live, this is desert land, to another channel and marched along the dry riverbed underneath the city walls, because they had aquifers that they had built in order to get water in, but remain safe from supposedly remain safe from intruders. And yet, see, they had figured out a way. This Babylon would have been about 50 miles away from modern-day Baghdad. So, in the region. I know when Patrick was stationed in Baghdad, he never had a chance to really go to any of the sites, but some of them he did. And got to see some of what was ancient kind of thing. And it's not far. Okay, chapter 6. No. We have to remember, this is a very large kingdom now. Okay? Very large. The satraps we're going to talk about are the provincial administrators that would have been delegated under the king, okay? Because the king could not handle that large a territory. Okay, chapter 6, verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps stationed throughout the whole kingdom. It would have been a very large kingdom. Now, what we don't know at this point, and it looks like Daniel is not that third in control anymore. It doesn't look like it anyway, at least at this point of the story. Now, remember, we've had a power shift, because we've gone from Nebuchadnezzar to Belshazzar to Darius. And so we've had some shifting of power structure going on here. Okay, verse 2. And over them 3 presidents. Well, I was wrong. Okay? If I'd finished reading the thought, including Daniel, to these satraps gave account so that the king might suffer no loss. But Daniel doesn't seem to play a lot of role right now. In fact, there's going to be some issues come up here. So Daniel's still present, but he's not it doesn't seem like in a real active role. But those satraps are really the ones that were preventing loss of land, of money, of grain, of all of that. They were really the ones in charge of it, not Daniel. Daniel doesn't seem to be, at least a little bit. But in verse 3, soon Daniel distinguished himself above the other presidents and satraps because of an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to appoint him over the whole kingdom. He did find favor with King Darius to some degree. In fact, we're going to find out King Darius really does become a believer. But Daniel's spirit was of God, and we know that. He really was God's right hand at the moment. He knew he got all his answers from God as he read that writing on the wall for Belshazzar, as he had for Nebuchadnezzar in interpreting his dreams. He would have been about 80 years old, though, at this point in time as well. But he was very blessed by God. God had placed him to assist in returning the Jews to Judah. Now think about that, how God placed him where he needed him and kept him there for the purpose of returning the Jews to Judah. Verse 4. So the presidents and the satraps, I love it, tried to find grounds for complaint against Daniel in connection with the kingdom. They were jealous. They were jealous of him. They couldn't figure out how come he was so reputable. He couldn't figure out why did Darius really like him? Why was he the favorite? And that's what they're trying to figure out. But they could find no grounds for complaint or any corruption because he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption could be found in him. Boy, did they want to find something. This should really kind of remind us of another story that we've already read about. This should remind us of Joseph, and his brothers, trying to find what could they against him. He had done everything right. But now, oh my goodness, here we are. Another Joseph story all over again? Kind of sounds like it, doesn't it? What's interesting, too, if we go back, in verse 3, in thinking about Daniel's spirit, I did forget to mention that, if we think back to in Ezra, the basic elements of a return, and that's the return to Judah appeared, because the temple would be rebuilt from Cyrus's treasury, and that's a king to come here. All the Jews who visited could return, and those who stayed would help with financing it. And all the gold and silver that had been stolen by Nebuchadnezzar would be returned. And so there's a plan God had, and he had Daniel in mind for this plan to be carried out. Okay, verse 5. The men, I love it, the men said, "We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of," look at that, "his God," big G. They really wanted to trap him. They wanted to find fault with God. Big G God, not little g gods, but with big G God. They wanted to find fault. For you and me, that's kind of what's starting to happen today. People try to find fault with our God because things don't turn out the way they want them to. Because things aren't perfect like we'd like. We'd like good health. We don't get it sometimes. We'd like our families to live forever. That doesn't happen. We'd like, and see, their little g gods, they thought could give them all of that. Verse 6. So the presidents and the satraps conspired and came to the king and said to him, "O King Darius, live forever." Can't you just see them swooning over this God, over to Darius? Flattery for the king. Will it make his heart love them more? They were trying very hard to sway Darius. They wanted him to feel good about who they were, because they were just, of course, little angels coming to him. Verse 7. All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an edict that whoever prays to anyone, divine or human, for 30 days except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions. Oh, my vanity and deception. Vanity and deception. Oh, they are trying so hard to convince Darius. They want so bad to persuade him to write this edict. Because once it's written, even Darius can't turn it around. He can't refuse it. He can't refute it. He can't change it. So badly they want Darius to comply to their wishes. Verse 8. Now, O king, establish the edict and sign the document so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Listen to the language they are trying. Listen to how hard they want this edict to be signed into law that cannot be changed. Understand there were 3 presidents, and yet Daniel's not even part of the conversation. Did you catch it? Only 2 of the presidents were there. All of the satraps may have been, but not Daniel. He was not part of this conversation. Verse 9. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and interdict. Persuasion was great, and it was signed. Persuasion can turn us from what our hearts say to letting Satan get his way. See, those other 2 presidents and satraps were not of God. They were of the devil, in essence. They wanted something. They wanted a governmental policy. And they talked King Darius into it. This next part, I think, is one of the stories outside of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that Daniel's known for, and it's the lion's den. But I love it. I love this story. But I want us to listen very closely to some things as we move through it, because there's some things that even I had not caught until I was studying it again. Verse 10. Although Daniel knew that the document had been signed, so he knew about it. He was not present for it, but he knew about it. He continued to go to his house, which had windows in its upper room that were open towards Jerusalem. Think about this. And to get down on his knees 3 times a day to pray to his God and praise him just as he had done previously. What I find interesting, and it is still true in Judaic homes, especially in Orthodox, they still will pray the 3 times a day. It also, for Muslims, it is that same thing, that they are praying, unfortunately, to Mecca instead of to Jerusalem. But they are 3 times a day on their knees praying. The law of God, though, is above the law of the land. Daniel knew that. He would not compromise, would suffer if he had to. For you and me, in this day and this time, cannot compromise our biblical, our godly laws. It is so hard right now because we have a world that is against God. It is now time for you and me to take our stand. It goes against culture. It goes against most of what's being said around us in the rhetoric. It is time for you and me to take a stand. Daniel, though, had maybe lost much of his heritage. His name had been changed to Belshazzar, although we're still using Daniel in our Bible because that's how it would have been written. It had been changed to a Babylonian one. He couldn't worship God in the way everything had been commanded. But he did point himself towards the promised land 3 times a day in prayer. He couldn't do everything. But not even death could thwart him from doing that. Look at verse 11. The conspirators, I love it, the conspirators came and found Daniel praying and seeking mercy before his God. Of course they knew he did it. He did it every day, 3 times a day. They caught him. They caught him praying. I find it interesting that how many of us, when we are, say, out to eat, stop and pray publicly? Not many. We're afraid to because someone may not appreciate it. Someone may not like it. I love being able to do it as a witness of who I am as God's child. To make the sign of the cross a visual sign of who we are as God's baptized children. It's not Catholic either, my friends. I know we think it's Catholic. No. It is a sign that on the day of your baptism was given on your forehead. And it is a sign of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit comes to you and me. It is that visual reminder of who we are. Look at verse 12. Oops. We're starting to get a change of theme here, maybe a little bit. Then they approached the king and said, concerning the interdict, the edict that was written, O king, did you not sign an interdict that anyone who prays to anyone, divine or human, within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the den of lions? You hear them? Can you hear the tattletale? Nanny, nanny, boo, boo, we got you. They wanted Daniel gone. They wanted him out of the way. The whole purpose of the decree was about getting rid of Daniel. It had nothing to do with anything else. And I can hear the singing song. Oh, King, da 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 da. Daniel did this. And now, can't we throw him in the lion's den? Because he was a bad boy. And the king answered, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. We say, verse 13. Then they responded to the king, Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the interdict you have signed. But he is saying his prayers 3 times a day. See, they thought he was a threat to the king because of his faithfulness to God. Well, actually, they thought he was a threat to them because of his faithfulness to God. This didn't have anything to do with the king. They didn't trust him at all. 1 iota. Verse 14. When the king heard of the charge, he was very distressed. He was determined to save Daniel, and until the sun went down, he made every effort to rescue him. See, Darius loves Daniel. See, Darius knew he had been trapped. It wasn't Daniel. It was Darius that was trapped. He was angry with himself because he had fallen prey to the common culture of a few. Quick decisions often get us in trouble. And that's what happened with Darius on this count. Verse 15. Then the conspirators came to the king and said to him, Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and the Persians that no interdict or ordinance that the king established can be changed. Oh, I'm just reminding you, O king, in case you forgot. The law has to be carried out. Or at least, yeah. Verse 16. Then the king gave the command, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the den of lions. And the king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you. This is probably the first prayer that King Darius prayed. He wanted no harm to come to Daniel. The den, the word den in Hebrew means to dig. So it would have been probably an underground pit with a hole in the top and in which you dropped food down through, and a hole in the front for which the lions were to enter. And maybe it probably was in a hillside, so the lions would have been run in and a gate dropped. But listen to this. In verse 17, a stone, not a gate, a stone was brought and laid at the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet. Would have been wax on a ring that would have been marked. and with the signet of his lords, so that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. That should remind us of something. Should remind us of Jesus and the tomb, the stone being rolled in front of it. This would have been a very large stone. Would have taken many to have moved it and put it there. And you have to remember, Daniel was dropped from the top down. And the lions, believe me, would have been hungry. When they were doing this, they did not feed the lions for several days to get them ready for what was about to happen. Verse 18, then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No food was brought to him, and sleep fled from him. He was very troubled. He wanted Daniel to be saved by God. My friends, we have to stop there. I know it's kind of like, oh my gosh, we're stopping at where in the story? Oh, no. Yes, we have to stop there. Don't worry. We'll finish it up next week. My friends, my prayers are for you each this week as we go through our week, as we go through this time and the seasons are changing again. I pray God be with you. He walk with you. He walk beside you. He walk behind you. He walk under you. He walks above you. And he carries you with all your troubles, with all your concerns, that you may rest well this night and in this week ahead. Don't forget, join me on Sunday at 10 o'clock, back here next Monday at 7 o'clock. The Lord bless you and keep you, my friends. See you soon. Bye.